My daughter's insulin pump failed at a sleepover, and I called my ex-wife begging her to bring backup insulin. I'm at the high roller table. I'm down $3,000. I need to win it back, she said, while our daughter was dying. I called 911. The rage that flooded through me in that moment was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Standing there with my phone pressed against my ear, hearing casino noise in the background, while my 12-year-old daughter Haley was slipping into diabetic ketoacidosis, something fundamental shifted inside me. This wasn't just about Rachel's gambling addiction anymore. This was about my child's life hanging in the balance while her mother chose cards over caring for her own daughter. My hands were shaking as I ended the call and immediately dialed 911. The dispatcher was professional but direct when she explained what I already knew in my gut. Paramedics couldn't administer insulin without Haley's specific prescription pen, which Rachel kept in her designer purse at the casino. I was 45 minutes away, racing through traffic at 90 miles per hour, while Rachel was 15 minutes from the sleepover house and refusing to leave her gambling table. As I drove, my mind started processing the situation with a clarity that surprised me. This wasn't just negligence or poor judgment. This was a pattern of behavior that had been building for months, and I'd been documenting it without even realizing the strategic value. Every missed pickup, every injury Haley came home with, every excuse Rachel made during custody hearings. It was all adding up to this moment where her priorities were crystal clear to anyone paying attention. The sleepover mom's frantic texts kept coming through my dashboard display. Blood sugar over 500, Haley unconscious, vomit on the bathroom floor. Each message made my foot press harder on the accelerator, but more importantly, each message was automatically backed up to my cloud storage. Evidence, documentation, time-stamped proof of Rachel's choices and their consequences. I'd spent 8 years as a senior forensic analyst at Capital Financial Investigations, specializing in cases where people thought they could hide their true priorities behind elaborate lies and manipulations. My job involved tracing financial patterns that revealed character, identifying when someone's stated values didn't match their actual behavior, and building comprehensive cases that courts couldn't ignore. I'd worked on embezzlement cases totaling over $2 million, insurance fraud investigations that saved companies hundreds of thousands, and custody evaluation audits that exposed parents who claimed devotion while demonstrating neglect. What Rachel didn't understand was that my professional background had given me access to resources most divorced fathers never knew existed. My colleague network included family law attorneys who specialized in high-stakes custody cases, private investigators who could document behavioral patterns, and forensic accountants who could trace every dollar Rachel spent on gambling versus Haley's medical supplies. More importantly, my experience had taught me to recognize exactly what I was seeing: systematic child endangerment disguised as parental rights. My financial position was something Rachel consistently underestimated because she'd never bothered to understand what I actually did for work. My base salary as a senior analyst was $94,000, but with consulting fees and expert witness testimony, my actual income last year was $127,000. I owned my house outright after paying off the mortgage early, maintained $83,000 in savings, and had built a retirement portfolio worth $156,000 through disciplined investing. Unlike Rachel, who lived paycheck to paycheck despite receiving $1,200 monthly child support, plus periodic bailouts from her parents, I had the financial resources to fight a prolonged legal battle. More crucially, I had professional relationships that Rachel couldn't match or manipulate. Dr. Elizabeth Hardy, the forensic psychologist who'd consulted on 3 of my corporate cases, specialized in evaluating parental fitness and had testified in over 200 custody modifications. Attorney Marcus Webb had built his practice around fathers' rights cases and maintained a success rate of 78% in obtaining primary custody when clear endangerment patterns existed. Detective Linda Torres, whom I'd worked with on financial crimes involving child welfare, understood exactly how to investigate and document systematic neglect. The documentation I'd been maintaining, without fully realizing its strategic value, was comprehensive and professionally organized. Every text message from Rachel was automatically backed up to 3 separate cloud services. I had photographs of every injury Haley came home with, detailed notes about Rachel's explanations, and a spreadsheet tracking patterns of missed pickups, late returns, and emergency situations. What Rachel saw as forgotten arguments, I recognized as a systematic record of endangerment that any family court judge would find compelling. My technical background had also taught me to recognize behavioral patterns that Rachel displayed perfectly. In financial investigations, we called it escalation of commitment, when people who'd made bad decisions doubled down instead of cutting their losses. Rachel had been escalating for months, each gambling session more important than Haley's needs, each excuse more elaborate to justify her choices. Tonight wasn't an aberration. It was the predictable next step in a pattern I'd been unconsciously documenting. When I finally reached the sleepover house the ambulance was already there. Haley was unconscious on a stretcher, her blood sugar too high for their equipment to measure. The paramedic's grim expression confirmed my worst fears, but his professional documentation of Haley's condition and the timeline of events gave me something crucial. Medical testimony from neutral witnesses about Rachel's choices and their consequences. Rachel didn't arrive until, reeking of cigarettes and wine, tossing the insulin pen at the ICU nurse like it was an inconvenience. Her first words weren't about Haley's condition, but about how my constant calling had made her lose $6,000 at the casino. Standing there watching our daughter on dialysis, listening to Rachel blame me for disrupting her gambling, I felt something cold and strategic replace the panic I'd been carrying. 2 days later, Haley's organs failed completely. She didn't make it. I sat in that hospital parking lot for 3 hours after they wheeled her body away, making lists in my phone of every person I needed to call, every piece of evidence I needed to preserve. The crying had stopped completely. Something cold and focused had replaced the grief, and I knew exactly what I had to do. The next morning, I implemented a response plan that drew on every skill I'd developed in 8 years of financial investigations. My first call was to Dr. Hardy, explaining what had happened and asking for an emergency consultation about documenting systematic neglect that resulted in death. She cleared her afternoon schedule and spent 3 hours reviewing the evidence I'd compiled, confirming that Rachel's pattern of behavior constituted clear endangerment that prosecutors would take seriously. Dr. Hardy connected me with Marcus Webb, whose reputation for aggressive advocacy was exactly what this situation demanded. Marcus reviewed my documentation and immediately saw the potential for both civil and criminal cases. Most wrongful death cases struggle with proving causation, he explained. You have timestamped medical records, witness testimony, and financial evidence showing a direct line from Rachel's choices to Haley's death. This isn't just negligence. This is criminal endangerment resulting in death. Detective Torres agreed to meet off duty to discuss potential criminal charges. Her 15 years investigating crimes against children had given her expertise in building cases that prosecutors couldn't ignore. The medical emergency creates a clear timeline, she explained. We can establish exactly when Haley needed help, document every choice Rachel made instead of providing that help, and show the direct consequences. With a child's death involved, prosecutors will take this seriously. My consultation with forensic accountant Janet Pierce revealed the full scope of Rachel's gambling problem. Through database searches and public records analysis, Janet identified 17 different casinos where Rachel held player rewards cards, total gambling losses of $37,000 over the past year, and a pattern of depleting funds allocated for Haley's medical supplies to support gambling addiction. This financial analysis provided concrete evidence that Rachel's gambling directly impacted Haley's care and ultimately contributed to her death. The strategic approach we developed involved parallel criminal and civil tracks. Marcus filed a wrongful death lawsuit, while Detective Torres worked with prosecutors to build criminal charges. The casino's surveillance footage, obtained through legal subpoena, showed Rachel actively declining phone calls while placing bets during the exact time frame when Haley needed emergency insulin. The timestamp evidence was devastating. 47 declined calls over 90 minutes while our daughter's organs shut down. Child Protective Services investigator Rebecca Foster conducted a posthumous investigation that officially substantiated medical neglect. Her report documented gambling receipts throughout Rachel's apartment, empty insulin supply containers that should have contained backup medication, and financial records showing Rachel spent more on casino visits than on Haley's medical needs. This government finding became crucial evidence for both criminal and civil proceedings. Rachel's attorney, David Brennan, attempted several defensive strategies that backfired spectacularly. His motion, claiming I'd orchestrated a conspiracy to frame Rachel, fell apart when medical experts testified about the clear timeline of Haley's crisis and death. His attempt to blame the insulin pump manufacturer crumbled when technical experts showed the device had sent 17 urgent alerts that Rachel ignored while gambling. Within 8 weeks, the consequences began manifesting exactly as our strategic team had predicted. The district attorney filed criminal charges of negligent homicide and child endangerment. The civil wrongful death lawsuit proceeded with overwhelming evidence of Rachel's systematic neglect. Rachel's financial situation collapsed under the weight of legal fees, forcing her to declare bankruptcy and move back in with her parents. The casino faced Gaming Commission investigation after I filed detailed complaints about their refusal to intervene during medical emergencies involving children. Their internal review resulted in policy changes requiring staff to assist when parents are notified of children's medical crises, changes that might prevent other children from experiencing what Haley endured. Rachel's criminal trial lasted 3 days. The jury heard testimony from paramedics, ICU doctors, and the sleepover mom about the timeline of Haley's crisis and Rachel's choices. The casino surveillance footage showing her declining emergency calls while gambling was played in court. After 4 hours of deliberation, they found her guilty of negligent homicide and child endangerment. The judge sentenced Rachel to 18 months in prison, followed by 3 years supervised probation. She was also ordered to pay $89,000 in restitution and complete mandatory addiction treatment. The civil wrongful death case resulted in a $340,000 judgment, though Rachel's bankruptcy meant actual collection would take years. Rachel served 14 months in state prison before being released on supervised probation. Her gambling addiction treatment was court-mandated and monitored, with any violations resulting in immediate return to custody. She lost her job, her apartment, and most of her social connections. Her parents, who had enabled her gambling for years, finally stopped providing financial support after learning the full scope of how their bailouts had contributed to Haley's death. The Gaming Commission implemented new statewide regulations requiring casinos to have emergency intervention protocols when patrons are notified of medical crises involving children. These Haley's Law provisions mandate that casino staff assist in emergency situations and cannot prevent patrons from leaving for verified medical emergencies. Today, I work as a consultant helping other parents document systematic neglect and endangerment patterns in custody cases. My experience with comprehensive evidence gathering and strategic legal response has helped dozens of families protect their children from dangerous situations. The investigation skills that revealed Rachel's true priorities continue serving families who need systematic documentation of endangerment patterns. Sometimes the most important victory isn't just seeking justice for your own child, but creating systemic changes that protect all children from parents who choose addiction over responsibility. Haley's death wasn't in vain if it prevents other children from suffering the same fate.